Namaskar students. Hope you are hale and hearty, taking care of your health and your studies. My name is Jyotsna and I am from Education Department, Chandigarh. In your previous year, you must have read about Story of a Shirt, in which you have learned that there is a chain of market which links the producer of cotton with the consumer of a shirt in the supermarket. There are various levels of production. There are many people directly or indirectly involved in this process of production. There are factors of production who are very vital in carrying out this activity. There are many rules made by the government to make these market processes conducive for both buyer as well as the producer. So what are these laws? One such law is that any child below the age of 14 cannot be engaged in any sort of labor. This is a legal offense. So today in this session we are going to take up chapter number 10 of grade 8 book Social and Political Life. The name of the chapter is Law and Social Justice. So without wasting any time, let's get going. So let us take a common market situation where the law is very important. This is the issue of workers' wages. Private companies, contractors, business persons normally want to make as much profit as they can. In the drive for profits, they might deny workers their rights and not pay them wages. For example, in the eyes of the law, it is illegal or wrong to deny workers their wages. Similarly, to ensure that workers are not underpaid or they are paid fairly, there is a law on minimum wages. So according to this law, a worker has to be paid not less than the minimum wage by the employer. The minimum wages are revised upwards every 5 years. As with the low or minimum wages, which is meant to protect workers, there are also laws that protect the interest of producers and consumers in the market. These help to ensure that the relations between these three, which are these three parties? The worker, consumer, and producer. The relation between these three parties are governed in a manner that is not exploitative. But merely making laws is not enough. The government has to ensure that these laws are implemented. This means that the law must be enforced. Enforcement becomes even more important when the law seeks to protect the weak from the strong. For instance, to ensure that every worker gets fair wages, the government has to regularly inspect work sites and punish those who violate the law. When the workers are poor or powerless, the fear of losing future earnings often forces them to accept low wages. Employers know this very well and they use their power to pay workers less than the fair wage. In such cases, it is crucial that laws are enforced. Through enforcing and upholding these laws, the government can control the activities of individuals or private companies so as to ensure social justice. Some of these laws have their basis in the fundamental rights guaranteed by the Indian Constitution. For instance, the right against exploitation says that no one can be forced to work for low wages or under bondage. Bondage means that nobody is bound to complete a task. Slavery is definitely a big no in the Indian Constitution. Similarly, the Constitution lays down no child below the age of 14 shall be employed to work in any factory or mines or any other hazardous employment. So in the next leg, we are going to get the answers of how are these laws played out in practice and to what extent do they address the concerns of social justice. In order to answer these questions, we are just going to take up some examples. First and foremost, let's take up a survey report. According to the 2001 census, over 12 million children in India aged between 5 and 14 work in various occupations including hazardous ones. In October 2006, the government amended the Child Labour Prevention Act, banning children under 14 years of age from working as domestic servants or as workers in dhabas, restaurants, tea shops, etc. It made employing these children a punishable offence. Anyone found violating the ban must be penalized with a punishment ranging from a jail term of 3 months to 2 years or fine of 10,000 to 20,000 rupees. The central government had asked state governments to develop plans to rescue and rehabilitate children who are working as domestic servants. To date, only 3 state governments, namely Maharashtra, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, have published these plans. Even today, more than a year after this law was passed. Moving on, let's talk about the greatest tragedy in the history of India. It was Bhopal gas tragedy. So the world's worst industrial tragedy took place in Bhopal around 36 years ago. Union Carbide, an American company, had a factory in the city in which it produced pesticides. At midnight on 2nd December 1984, methyl isocyanide, a highly poisonous gas, started leaking from the UC plant. Talking about it, Aziza Sultan, a survivor, shares that at about 12:30 am, I woke up to the sound of my baby coughing badly. In the half light, I saw that the room was filled with a white cloud. I heard people shouting, "Run, run!" Then I started coughing, with each breath seeming as if I was breathing in fire. My eyes were burning. Within 3 days, more than 8,000 people were dead. Hundreds of thousands were maimed. Most of those exposed to the poison gas came from poor working class families, of which nearly 50,000 people are today too sick to work. Among those who survived, many developed severe respiratory disorders, eye problems, and other disorders. Children developed peculiar abnormalities, like the girl in the photo. So what is a worker's work? If we are to understand the events leading to Bhopal disaster, we have to ask, why did Union Carbide set up its plant in India? One reason why foreign companies come to India is for cheap labor. Wages that the companies pay to workers, say in USA, are far higher than what they have to pay to workers in poorer countries like India. For lower pay, companies can get longer hours of work. Additional expenses such as for housing facilities for workers are also fewer. Thus, companies can save cost and earn higher profits. Cost cutting can also be done by other more dangerous means. Lower working conditions, including lower safety measures, are used as ways of cutting cost. In the UC plant, every safety device was malfunctioning or was in short supply. Between 1980 and 1984, the work crew for the MIC plant was cut in half from 12 to 6 workers. The period of safety training for workers was brought down from 6 months to 15 days. The post of night shift worker for the MIC plant was abolished. So if we draw comparison between UC's safety system in Bhopal and its other plant in the US, we'll get to know that at West Virginia, computerized warning and monitoring systems were in place, whereas the UC plant in Bhopal relied on manual gauges and the human senses to detect gas leaks. At the West Virginia plant, emergency evacuation plans were in place, but it was non-existent in Bhopal. So why are there such sharp differences in safety standards across countries. And even after the disaster happened, why was compensation to the victims so low? One part of the answer lies in what is perceived as the worth of an Indian worker. One worker can easily replace another. Since there is so much unemployment, there are many workers who are willing to work in unsafe conditions in the return for a wage. Making use of the worker's vulnerability, employers ignore safety in workplace. Thus, even so many years after the Bhopal gas tragedy, there are regular reports of accidents in construction sites, mines or factories due to the callous attitude of the employers. So let's talk about enforcement of safety laws. As a lawmaker and enforcer, the government is supposed to ensure that safety laws are implemented. It is also the duty of the government to ensure that the right to life guaranteed under Article 21 of Constitution is not violated. What was the government doing when there were such blatant violations of safety standards in the UC plant? First, the safety laws were lax in India. Second, even these weak safety laws were not enforced. Government officials refused to recognize the plant as hazardous and allowed it to come up in populated locality. When some municipal officials in Bhopal objected that the installation of an MIC production unit in 1978 was a safety violation, the position of the government was that the state needs the continued investment of the Bhopal plant, which provides jobs. It was unthinkable, according to them, to ask UC to shift to cleaner technologies or safer procedures. Government inspectors continued to approve the procedures in the plant, even when repeated incidents of leaks from the plant made it obvious to everybody that things were seriously wrong. This, as you know, is contrary to what the role of a lawmaking and enforcement agency should be. Instead of protecting the interest of the people, their safety was being disregarded both by government and by private companies. This is obviously not at all desirable. With more industries being set up both by local and foreign business in India, there is a great need for stronger laws protecting workers' rights and better enforcement of these laws. So let's talk about new laws to protect the environment. In 1984, there were very few laws protecting the environment in India, and there was hardly any enforcement of these laws. The environment was treated as a free entity, and any industry could pollute the air and water without any restriction. Whether it was our rivers, air, groundwater, the environment was being polluted and the health of the people was disregarded. Thus, not only was UC a beneficiary of lower safety standards, it didn't have to spend any money to clean up the pollution. In the USA, this is a necessary part of the production process. The Bhopal disaster brought the issue of environment to the forefront. Several thousands of persons who were not associated with the factory in any way were greatly affected because of the poisonous gases leaked from the plant. This made people realize that the existing laws, though weak, only covered the individual worker and not persons who might be injured due to industrial accidents. In response to this pressure from environmental activities and others, in the years following the Bhopal gas tragedy, the Indian government introduced new laws on the environment. Henceforth, the polluter was to be held accountable for the damage done to the environment. The environment is something that people over generations will share, and it could not be destroyed merely for industrial development. The courts also gave a number of judgments upholding the right to a healthy environment as intrinsic to the fundamental rights to life. In Subhash Kumar versus State of Bihar case of 1991, the Supreme Court held that the right to life is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution, and it includes the right to the enjoyment of pollution-free water and air for full enjoyment of life. The government is responsible for setting up laws and procedures that can check pollution, clean rivers, and introduce heavy fines for those who pollute. So laws are necessary in many situations, whether this be the market, office or factory, so as to protect people from unfair practices. Private companies, contractors, business persons, in order to make higher profits, resort to unfair practices such as paying workers low wages, employing children for work, ignoring the condition of work, ignoring the damage to the environment, etc. A major role of the government, therefore, is to control the activities of private companies by enforcing and upholding laws so as to prevent unfair practices and ensure social justice. This means that the government has to make appropriate laws and also has to enforce the laws. Laws that are weak and poorly enforced can cause serious harm, as the Bhopal gas tragedy showed. While the government has a leading role in the respect, people can exert pressure so that both private companies and the government act in the interest of the society. Environment, as we saw, is one example where people have pushed a public cause and the courts have upheld the right to healthy environment as intrinsic to the right to life. In this chapter, we have argued that people now must demand that this facility of healthy environment be extended to all. Likewise, workers' rights is an area where the situation is still very unfair. People must demand stronger laws protecting workers' interests so that the right to life is achieved for all. Let's try to analyze what we have extracted out of today's session. On your screens, you can see certain statements or questions. You have 4 options to hit and you have to pick the correct option. So, let's get started. The term used for event in which large number of losses occur to life and property: toxic, poisonous, disaster or vulnerable. Yes, these types of events are called disaster. Moving on, which word is used for pollution? Contamination, toxic, pure, none of these. Yes, contamination is used for pollution. What is the term used for a 10-year-old child working in a factory? Child labor, factory worker, beldar or all of these? Yes, it is called child labor, which is illegal in India. The law against child labor was implemented in 2001, 2003, 2005 or 2006. Yes, it was implemented in 2006. Moving on, how do the private companies earn more profit? Giving high wages, less working hours, both of these or none of these? The correct answer is none of these. They actually pay lesser and they want their workers to work more. So, none such option is there. Which type of pollution is created by vehicles' smoke? Air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution or all of these? Very easy. It is air pollution which is created by vehicles' smoke. How can we reduce environment pollution? By using diesel car, by using CNG kits in vehicles, by using petrol cars or none of these? So, the environmental pollution can be reduced by using CNG kits in the vehicle. Alright, which of the following are hazardous industries? Pesticides, asbestos producing, ship breaking or all of these? Yes, the correct option is option D, all of these. Alright, on your screens you can see 2 set of words in column A and column B. You have to match these columns. So, producer is a manufacturer. Pollution is something which is not pure. Farmer is a farm worker. Air pollution is vehicles, power stations. Water pollution is dirty water. Alright, so are these statements true or false? Union Carbide, an American company, produced soaps. No, it is false. To make profit, private companies give high wages to their workers. False. Workers' union is an association of workers. True. There are laws to protect interest of consumers and producers. True. Workers' union is common in factories and offices. True again. Many countries have banned the use of dangerous pesticides like DDT. It is true. In years to come, you will get to know why manufacturing industries are so important for an economy. why government policies are so strict to raise the standards of manufacturing industries in India. You know, government is doing each and everything to make it a success, to give conducive conditions to both the buyer as well as the seller. But it becomes our duty as citizens to be vigilant, to always voice if we see anything going wrong, be it against people or against environment. Because together we can and we will make a difference. With this, I sign off today. We'll be back with many more videos. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy and keep learning. Namaskar.